So the Tech for Impact Showcase, we're very excited this week. We're covering, or we've covered the last few days, amazing topics from finance, AI to representation, inclusion, nature, biodiversity, and today we'll talk about climate action and food. And here, before we dive straight into the amazing startups and their stories and how they create impact, I have here with me Mark. Mark is the head of Europe at Tenity, and he'll just give a really short introduction on Tenity and why we're here.
Thanks a lot, Michelle, for the kind words, and welcome everyone in the room, but obviously also online live or then later in the recording, I guess. Big pleasure to be here, and thanks a lot for this. Let me exactly start. So why do we exist? Why Tenity? Who are we? We are really a global innovation ecosystem, and innovation ecosystem means we bring together the different parties that are needed to bring innovation into the space. We focus on finance-related elements, so startups is more fintech, Web3, but more and more, and I think in the last 4 years, we had a strong focus also on anything that is related to the topic of climate. We call it climate fintech, and we have actually a dedicated hub in Tallinn focusing on exactly this topic. And for us, it's really about bringing together the corporate, the traditional with the new, the innovative part. And so what we do in the 3 pillars for the 3 main audiences that we have for the startups, it's all about investing, but also supporting them on their path to growth. And this means we invest, right? Whoever joins the program that Tenity does like 6 times a year across the globe gets access to. And then we help them obviously throughout the paths. And on the corporate side, it's basically the second part where we work together with more mature startups, and there the focus is on how can we bring this magic to life on collaboration between startups and the traditional more incumbent companies. I always like to call it how to make an elephant dance with a mouse. Obviously not the most obvious one, but this is actually the challenge that we are trying to solve every day. And the third element is obviously the investors, and there we have access to our own fund where we invest in the startups. Last year we invested in 50 companies. This year the goal is 60 to 80 companies, and we are proud to work here on with our LPs, so we have limited partners in the fund like UBS, Julius Baer, Generali, and others joining us on that journey. And maybe just to give an overview on where we are active, it's really across the globe, and now with over 50 people in part of the team, and really working around these 2 main focus, early stage and a little bit later stage, and collaborating. I think this is a high-level overview. I don't know if we want to dive into some of the questions that you might have or something deeper. No.
Something deeper. No, thank you so much. That's great. Just a short introduction so we also know why we're here and working together also with Doconomy and the partners for the event, such as UBS, S&P Global, Business Sweden, and all of those that actually make this week possible. It's quite amazing to be here for the full week. And today, we are having 4 amazing companies that will share, their solutions, their stories. I am particularly excited because we cover topics today that I personally don't know so much about. So I think it's a learning opportunity for everyone. Before actually we get started, a little bit of a call to action to the online audience, but also the people who are here today. Reach out to the startups, see how you can, support them on their way, also while they're presenting. Together we can really create more impact and create more consciousness also, all over the world. And so without further ado, really, I would like to invite our first company to the stage. This is Atlas Agro. We're learning more about fertilizer industry and how to make this more sustainable. And here with us is Peter Ospro. Here we go.
Thank you. All right. Thanks for having me. So coming in this morning, I talked to Denise. I said, what do you know about fertilizer? And she said, not a lot. So one fun fact is that artificial fertilizer or chemical fertilizer is quite important to us. About 2% of everyone's body here has been made in a chemical fertilizer factory. And if we look at, how important is it really? So just looking at some simple stuff, statistics about the number of people in the world. So today we are about 8 billion people worldwide. And if we did not have mineral fertilizer, the maximum amount of people we could sustain would be about 4 billion, so about half the number of people. Now, according to United Nations, we will be about 2 billion more people in 2050. So there is no less need of a fertilizer. In fact, McKinsey did an analysis looking at all the kind of disruptive and new techniques and new products coming as an alternative to mineral fertilizer. And according to them, the minimum amount of fertilizer needed in the future is about the same as now. So it's quite important. However, it's not entirely without its problem. And the one we are attacking is primarily related to climate. And I cannot really ask the online audience, but does anyone here have any idea how much CO2 emissions comes from fertilizer? A lot is a good answer. So it's about 1 billion tons per year, and that is the same as all of aviation, and it's about 50% more than shipping. However, the attention it receives is much less than in particular those two sectors. Fertilizer is one of the so-called hard-to-abate sectors, together with plastic, cement, steel, and so on. But that's why we are going for it. So in total, it's a lot. If you look at it per type of product, I think it's interesting to kind of relate it to what we eat and what we wear. And if you see, here are 3 examples. Basically, if you take the amount of emissions just from the nitrogen fertilizer that was applied to grow these types of products, those are the numbers you're looking at. It's the grams of carbon that was emitted from this fertilizer while it's in use. So if you have 1 kilo of coffee, just from the fertilizer used for that coffee, you have 750 grams of emission. And from any cotton garment you have, on average, you will have twice the weight of emissions of carbon from the fertilizer than you have a cotton garment, which is quite a lot. Now that's just looking at the carbon. Of course, there are other sources of carbon from foodstuffs and so on. So if you look at a kind of product and from cradle to grave, so to speak, is this a big part of it or not? So we had help to analyze potato chips. And in this case, we took potato chips all the way from fertilizer, pesticide, production, and so on, application, transportation, packaging, even the business travel of the company that was selling this, including the cooking. And in total, it's about half of the total emissions of any food product just comes from the fertilizer. So it's, when we are talking about decarbonization of food and farming, it's the most important lever that you have. It's not very expensive to fix, though. So when it's kind of hard to abate sector, we like to call it an easy to abate sector. It's just to get on with it. If you take the total fertilizer cost today and you double it and you say, oh, for green fertilizer we would pay double, it would consist less than a 1% price increase for the consumer. So at the end, it's less than 1% of the price to double the fertilizer price. And of course, you don't need to double it. You can sell it competitively. So maybe, why hasn't no one else done it and why can we do it? So we come from the industry itself. So I've been working my entire professional life in the industry. I've been at the C-level of 2 of the 4 biggest fertilizer companies in the world. And the team has similar kinds of experience. And we've basically done 3 things to make this work. Number 1 is we are working with kind of the existing technology at large scale. Because the existing technology is very close to the thermodynamic optimum. It's very hard to improve upon. But what we have done is get rid of the coal and gas that's used today and use electrolysis of water instead. So the rest of the process is the same. And the plants are large, so you get the capital scale effect. In addition, since we were first, so we started 2 years ago, and no one had really started working on this in a new way, we have found ways of improving upon that technology. So if you were just to kind of, let's say, just swap the front end of the plant with renewables, compared to what we have applied for patents for, it's about a 10% efficiency increase. So that makes it more effective than just coming in from the start. In addition, building based on renewables allows us to build in a different way. So the standard industry way of building is find a place with low-cost gas, maybe Saudi Arabia, build a massive plant and export to the world. And farming happens where there is good renewable energy. By definition, there is sunlight there. We can build in the market next to the farmer. So as one example, our first plant in Washington, the farmers, Washington State in the US, the farmers there get their product from China, from Russia, of course also from the Gulf Coast of the US, and they pay about a 30% premium just from transportation, whereas we will build and sell just around the chimney of the plant. Chimney where only lovely air comes out, no bad stuff. So these three things together, using existing technology at scale, improving upon it, and having a new business model where you sell in the market instead of these big exports, means we can compete with fossil production as it is today. Now, the reason we're saying it's an easy to abate industry, but yet it's still hard, it's the scale of it. So our first plant we have on the left, it's in Washington State, as I mentioned. The cost of such a plant is a little bit north of $1 billion, so it's a large investment. It takes 4 to 5 years to build because of the size, of course, because of all the environmental permitting and so on. And this one we hope to have ready in 2027, and that means the world will have 1 green fertilizer plant, but it means we need 799 more. So the challenge is not what to do, it's to get enough energy and capital into doing it. And what we need, so I mentioned our process is fairly efficient. We're able to compete with fossil fertilizer, but we need to sell it slightly different. So we kind of took a call to arms. All we need is basically for the procurement to be different, right? Because we can match the average prices of fossil, but we cannot both sell cheaper average and if fossil prices go to like 0 and match the downside. So the procurement today of everyone, the food retailers and so on, is based on like day-to-day annual procurement and following these market prices, and not what we can offer, which is slightly different. Competitive, yeah, but different. And when we make that happen, and we have signed off text, then we can build. And our evil plan is to build 1 such plant, 1 to 2 plants every year, as fast as we can. We have projects now in North America and Brazil, and we're trying to start in Europe. And then we hope to inspire the existing industry to follow us, so that they will go away from fossil or fossil with some kind of carbon capture to green as well. Questions?
Thank you for a very pedagogic presentation. Really interesting to hear, and lots of potential there. I was wondering what is your next steps beyond? I mean, I see getting capital, but what else do you need, and how can the audience here and online and Davos be of help?
Yeah, we have pretty good control over the construction of the plants and the sites and the power and all this. Really what we need is interest. So what we would hope is that whoever makes these potato products thinks that it's worth something to reduce their carbon footprint by like 50% of that particular type of product. For a company, so we had the help of a consultancy to analyze what does it mean for a big company, and like Walmart itself, 4% of Walmart's emissions are nitrogen fertilizer. So if Walmart wanted to get rid of this, they would say maybe it's worth not paying more, just changing how we procure a little bit. Because Walmart now, they don't buy fertilizer. They buy processed foods from someone who bought from some kind of processor who bought from a farmer. So it's a long chain. And what we would hope was that the food industry itself would get slightly more engaged.
Wonderful. So I want to have actually 2 questions. One is the bottom line. I'm a farmer. How much would I save in terms of carbon emissions, and how much more will it cost me? The second question is, were you able to monetize a carbon credit or carbon? Do you have any tangible carbon emission reduction benefits from what you actually have achieved, which is amazing?
Yeah, good question. So the product we make is exactly the same. So for the farmer, is no change in practices. The emission reduction is in the production. So instead of using coal or gas, we use renewable energy, which means, it's proven, the per ton reduction is physically, has to be there because we don't have any carbon and the alternative does. With the kind of prices that we can sell at, the farmer does not need to pay more. So for the farmer, it's kind of a no change scenario. They can do this without any change. There is carbon offsets is one thing. We want to talk about carbon insets, which means for us to sell this to, I don't know, someone who wants to offset a flight doesn't really make sense. This belongs kind of in the food value chain. So for the farmer, if the farmer cares about their carbon emissions, this would reduce it by 20+%, and then that would follow through to, I don't know, the processor, to the food company, and to the retailer.
Thanks a lot. A lot I have learned. With regards to, you say now have one, you need 800. This sounds for me like you can't do it alone. And with that context, is there a way, if you say use the same technology and the same approaches, and again, I'm not an expert, but to convert existing fertilizer plants rather than building new, bringing down the 4 years timeline and the 1 billion cost maybe to, I don't know, a fraction of that?
So it's a bit technical, but roughly speaking, there are two different types of plants. One of them you can't convert, and one of them you cannot. It happens to be that the ones that you can convert are in Europe and Russia. The ones you cannot are everywhere else. And the cost of converting is something like 60% of building a new one. It takes about the same time. So there's no easy way out.
Thank you. 100% learning curve for me. Thank you very much for this. Maybe related to that, what is the impact of one such green fertilizer infrastructure, which is very capital, time, resource, skills intensive, right, on the global fertilizer industry? I mean, is there a 0 point whatever impact, and you really need this 800, and it takes you 20 or 30 years, or what is kind of the impact?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people in the world. So this plant is not small. It will feed about 16 million people. It will reduce emissions by, or like avoid emissions of about 1 million tons per year, a bit more. But we do need the other 800 plants. So this kind of, if we want to do, at the point in the future, if we want to have zero emissions, zero man-made emissions from agriculture, we have to do this. Of course, as was mentioned, we cannot possibly do it alone, and we don't want to. So our mission is to make this happen. It's not that we make it happen. So we would really hope that the other fertilizer companies kind of follow. Must say. And a little personal hard thing is probably just leave carbon capture for new plants alone. For existing plants, it's great, you get rid of carbon. But for new plants, I don't think it's necessary. I think you can go straight to green.
I'm wondering what the lifetime of these plants are. So if all you did was build all new plants with this technology, how long would it take to convert completely to this?
Yeah. So these plants last a long time because you essentially replace the parts. So existing plants today, the average age is more than 30 years globally. In Europe, it's more than 40. You have plants operating that are 60 or 70 years old. So once this is there, it will operate forever.
Thank you so much. A big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, next you will hear about fire, I believe. I would like to welcome to the stage Istvan Kereshi. I'm sorry if I don't 100% correctly pronounce your name. CEO and co-founder. Caroline Camont, I'm also co-founder. And Imre Bartos. Thank you, CTO.
Thank you for this lovely introduction. Thank you. As mentioned, here we have our CEO, Dr. Istvan Kereshi, co-founder, as well myself, Caroline Camont, and Imre Bartos, as well a doctor. And we wouldn't be here today without our fellow partners that we have listed here on the bottom of this slide. So thank you for everyone and your participation. I'd like to ask the crowd, take a minute and look at the list here on the slide. Can you please shout out a few countries that you recognize? Switzerland, very good. Any others? Botswana, there's Norway, Sweden, quite a few countries here. Yeah, Sambu. Why is this listed here? There's a list of 140 countries, and in total, the carbon emissions from all of these 140 countries is less than the Canadian wildfires that happened just now in 2023. How did it get this bad? Where are we focusing and drawing our attention towards? On the left, you can see there's a picture of firefighters on mules. This is their prevention tactic right now. This was taken in California just last year. An outdated but effective practice, however, a little bit slow. And right now, the attention is mostly on the actual suppression part. So on the right-hand side, you see a massive aircraft dropping retardant that is $100,000 every single drop. So it all comes down to speed. Speed is critical in this climate crisis, especially with wildfires contributing to it.
Thank you very much. What causes these fires? And this is shifting year by year. But due to climate change, the fluctuation of wet years and dry years become more and more extreme. So you get dry years with a lot of lightning strikes. So the number of lightning strikes continues to increase every year, and it reaches areas that didn't have lightning before, like the Arctic. So 90% of the ignitions last year in Canada were due to lightning strikes. In the horrible bushfires in Australia in 2020, 90%, over 90% were due to lightning ignitions. So that's our focus, lightning. We started our company in Gainesville, Florida, which is one of the hotspots for lightning strikes. And over the last 10 years, we developed a technology that focuses on how can you find those lightning strikes that are dangerous. And here's the interesting part. Not all lightning are created equal. There's the average lightning strike that's dangerous for someone playing soccer on the field or going swimming or out on the beach, but it's definitely not dangerous in terms of fire ignition. And then there's a special type of lightning strike that's different, we'll see how, and those are the ones that start the fires. So that's the basis of the technology. This is a big problem. We just heard from Caroline that 140 countries emit less CO2 than these climate change-driven huge wildfires, right? Just the one in Canada emitted more last year than 140 countries. From an economical perspective, last year the estimated damages are $1.5 trillion from wildfires globally. Now, there are many technological solutions that try to solve this, but as we can see, they're falling short for various reasons. They don't look at the source of the ignition. They're more of a reactive approach. They try to find the fire once it gets big and then suppress it with planes and expensive resources. I have a question to you. We will have some questions on this stage, so please, what is the difference between the left picture and the right picture? Very good answer. So this was a trick question. So when firefighters look at lightning today in many agencies, they do not see the difference. They look the same. But with our technology, you can see that some lightning is short and cold, and some lightning is long, about 1,000 times longer, and creates a lot of heating. So that's the crucial difference. What if you have 5,000 lightning strikes, and then you can throw away most of it and only look at those 20 that have a potential of starting a fire? You save a lot of time, you save a lot of resources, and you save a lot of carbon. And now I would like to hand it over to Imre, our CTO.
Thank you, Stefan. So lightning strikes are horrible because they ignite these wildfires, but they're also special because they let us use timing to act on these events. In an ideal world, we would want to know exactly when and where a wildfire was ignited. And if you could go there right away, we could put it out with a bucket of water instead of the billions we are spending on them now. And by finding lightning strikes right away, they are loud and bright, so we can do that. We know where this may happen. This is not enough because there are so many lightning strikes, but we can also detect with our technology the long and warm lightning strikes that István mentioned that are more likely to cause these wildfires. We combine this information with information about the environment, weather, and use artificial intelligence to pinpoint to the high-risk lightning strikes that are the most likely to actually result in a wildfire. And this is critical because, as István mentioned, the number of lightning strikes is growing, and in fact, there are so many of them that we can't possibly follow up all of them. If you look at this image, this is a picture of one of the California wildfires that was ignited by lightning strikes. On this image, there is about 5,000 lightning strikes that occurred within one day. If one were to go and look at each of these, there wouldn't be much information. There's just too many of them. However, if we use our technology to down select which lightning strikes are the more likely to cause fire, we see something like what you see on the right side. By limiting this number, we give the opportunity to firefighters to actually go to the sites and mitigate these fires. To go even further, because this is still a high probability but not 100%, to go to 100%, we developed a drone technology that actually acts on these high-risk lightning strikes, flies to the location, and confirms visually, or with infrared, if you will, that there is actually an ignition, and so the firefighters only need to go to the sites where we know 100% accuracy that there is a fire. And this fast response and close examination is critical. If you look at the image that I'm showing here, just to ask a question as well, do you guys see where the fire is in this image? The correct answer is that you don't, right? Just like what Ishmael said, tricky question. And the reason is we look visually. If you did look at this through infrared, it would be much more obvious what actually happened. But because we want to react as early as possible, this is still a smoldering fire, so you really have to approach this and look up close to find this. However, if we do this, we can actually locate these wildfires and give firefighters the ability to go exactly to where the fires started right away.
Thank you, Imre. So where are we operational at the moment? We have a global outreach, and currently we're based in California, as well in northern and southern. We're based in Florida, Brazil, and also Australia. We always enjoy hearing feedback from every customer, and we are always looking forward to expanding our operational services. We have plans to expand within the United States for 200, but also for Australia this coming year. Who are some of our customers and how happy are they with the FNN solution and technology? We have Chief John Rollerson. He's based out of the Florida Forest Service, and he's been very essential in championing our technology and raising awareness about our mission. We have also Dr. Marta Yerba. She's part of the Australian Bushfire Initiative, and she's been also a very key player in championing our solution. Then we also have Matthew Connolly. He's running basically this camera system based out of Australia, and we have been able to fully integrate our detector technology with the camera system network based in Canberra, Australia. So what are we doing for future initiatives? There's an X Prize challenge currently active focused on wildfire. The mission is to detect and autonomously put out a wildfire in 10 minutes. It's quite the challenge, but nevertheless, we're very excited to be competing. We're always open to partnerships, and a call to action here would be if anyone is passionate about wildfire, carbon emissions, or climate change, please feel free to reach out. Currently, our team is consisting of Swiss drones. We have visited their factory here in Switzerland. It was beautiful. Also, we have University of Florida and NVIDIA. So we're very excited to be continuing forward on this challenge. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen today, and we look forward to having your questions. Thank you.
Questions?
Thanks a lot. Now I learned that there's cold and hot lightning. I didn't know that. Can you say a little bit more about your product? So it consists of the algorithm, some kind of dashboards for the end users, and the drone. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for the question. There are three parts to it. And the most important part is the detector. So it's a hardware-based detector that you put about every 60 kilometers. So you build a network from those detectors, and then you can detect the high-risk lightning strikes with a very good accuracy. Within 40 meters, you can detect the high-risk lightning strikes. So that's number one, the hardware detectors. And then the data goes into a dashboard. We partnered with a company called Esri that does the mapping. And so we deploy our dashboard, and the firefighters can see it on their computer screens that these are the locations. And then the third part is the drone component, that for those who purchase the drone can autonomously go out and check out those ignition points. So these are the three parts: the hardware detector, the software as a service, which is the layer of data layer, and then the drone as the third thing. No, thank you.
Good, thanks a lot. You didn't speak cost, or I missed it. Like, how expensive is it to, I don't know, cover an area like the Canada bushes, or like Australia, where we're crazy, or San Francisco area?
Our director of finance has a very good answer.
Yes, thank you for this lovely question. It's very important to understand the cost, especially dealing with public services as well and government agencies. So it depends on the amount of area they would like to cover. So we like to focus first on those areas of forestry that are close to also the city side. So these are the most at risk. If a wildfire starts in the forest and it easily enters a city, this can cause a lot of mayhem. So we prefer to focus first on communities that are at high risk for lightning, ignited wildfires, and the proper topography as well. The cost can be dependent on the agency themselves. We do prefer implementing our solution as a paid pilot program, where they would pay for the hardware and test out the data layers, and we would customize our dashboard to their needs. So we're very keen on listening to our customers, making sure that if they want a certain weather index perhaps on the dashboard showing what happened at that exact moment of time, we can of course customize this. For customization, it is all still under one fee though.
Per square kilometer, like I didn't hear any number, like per square kilometer or per like
quantitative numbers here. Yeah. We're in Switzerland, right? We need
exactly. Let's talk numbers.
Yes. So implementing a system of six detectors, which would cover about half of Switzerland, to give you a kind of a sense. The cost is around $200,000
per year, or
for the hardware installation.
For the hardware,
installation,
software.
And that includes the detectors, and then roughly 40% of that for an annual fee, and then there are other costs with the drone. But basically, if you want the lightning data, that's about a ballpark estimate.
Hello, very, very interesting. I used to work a lot with agriculture in Brazil. We operated a business of around 100,000 acres, or 450 square kilometers of sugarcane. And we had a lot of problems with fires. Some of it are also by natural causes. In addition to all the problems that you highlight with wildfires, there were, of course, very substantial economic damages, because in the case of sugarcane, it's a perennial crop. You don't just lose 1 year harvest, you lose more than that. Have you thought about how to approach more the commercial market, agricultural market at all, or is that not your focus?
It's a very interesting question, and actually our deployment in Brazil is in this direction. So forestry is generally responsible for the majority of the resources in the US, for example, but in Brazil some of these private actors are really big. And so we are working with a group there that has deployed wildfire cameras, because many agencies buy the wildfire cameras. But the thing with the camera is it has to know where to point. These cameras looking at us, they're looking at us. They know where to look. And so the point here is that our system is integrated in Brazil, for example, with the camera network, so that we know that this is a likely ignition spot, and then the camera can check it out. It can work similarly with the drones that we're deploying, or even with satellite that can be tasked that this area is dangerous, it needs to be checked out. So a very good question. This is one of the approaches. Thank you.
I was thinking about building on the commercial side of this, and forestry actors, etc. Are you thinking about collaborating with insurance companies?
Yes, that's something very important. Please go ahead.
Yes, that's a very good question, because we have been looking into this, and we're involved with an accelerator program in New York. So this is a big headquarter for a lot of the US-based insurance groups such as State Farm, and these are one of the big players that they're removing themselves out of at-risk areas. So if you purchase a house in California right now, you can't insure it. So not only is it costly on your own emotional health, but also on the financial side. So we've looked into partnering with insurance groups to understand how this can affect premiums. For example, if it can lower a premium, knowing that this certain community at an at-risk area is receiving this high-risk lightning data and solution that is essentially eliminating this wildfire risk. So we are in the works of exploring this right now, mostly for the US market. Yeah.
Would you like this microphone?
If there are no more questions, thank you so much. I think we've all learned a lot about wildfires. All right, and now next up, I believe we talk a little bit more about food as well, among other things. I'm very excited to introduce VAXA Technologies. Here with us today is Crystal Riedemann. She's the VP of Business Development and Impact. We have Ohad Bashan, CEO, and Isaac Bersin, CTO, also of VAXA Technologies. Please take the stage. Oh yeah, I'll take a bit. I will take a little
bit. Hi everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present here. My name is Ohad Bashan. I'm CEO of VAXA, Professor Isaac Bersin, CTO, and Crystal Riedemann, VP of Carbon Impact. So the picture here, the guy in the middle, his name is Davos. Davos used to work on an Icelandic fishing boat. Now he's featured on the November issue of National Geographic, working on the world's most effective and sustainable food production system. This technology is revolutionary. At VAXA, we call it energy to food. It is designed to address some of the biggest nutrition and impact issues we face today. We all know what these issues are. In 25 years, we'll have more than 10 billion people with a growing appetite. A third of our global emissions are from the agricultural sector. 50% of the world's habitable land is used, and we use most of the fresh water. The current agricultural system and practices are unsustainable. So what will happen in 25 years if nothing changes? What is the solution? The solution for food production is decoupling. Decoupling food production from water, land, and GHG emission. This is what we do at VAXA. Through the strategic location in Iceland, we integrate our technology with a power plant. We developed a new scientific approach for the production of microalgae that is sustainable. We use less than 1% of the water, less than 1% of the land, and our production process is carbon negative. Through controlling growth conditions, we've turned agriculture into technology. Our technology has yielded unprecedented nutrition and impact value, presenting the first natural source that is able to replace beef, to provide high quality and sustainable nutrition while reducing over 100 million tons of CO2 emission over the next decade. This is what we call impact nutrition. So how did we come up with this novel idea? Here's the man who knows algae best, Professor Isaac Bersin.
Thank you, Ohad. A pleasure to be here. So I started this relationship with algae. I fell in love with them as a young scientist at MIT. where I learned about the critical role that microalgae played in enabling life on this planet, and the crucial role they should play in sustaining life on this planet. So microalgae are absolutely cute. You can think about them as single-cell plants. They come in many shapes, colors, forms, and they are baskets of nutrition. Like many other plants, they think that CO2 is gourmet food, and they fix it into organic carbon. But unlike most of the staple foods we cultivate, which are mostly agricultural waste, in the case of microalgae, it's a complete nutrition. There are no stems, no leaves, no roots, no agricultural waste. They are a primary producer of essential amino acids, vitamins, minerals, etc. Basically a key to life. This 20 years of relationship with algae led us to Iceland, as Ohad explained, with an integrated system with a geothermal power plant. But what have we learned during these years? We learned that cultivating microalgae is a lot like marriage. You need to keep them happy every day, all day, which is a very, very hard thing to do. Keeping algae happy means you have to provide them with optimal growth conditions, light intensity, light composition, light and dark cycles, pH, temperature, etc. Okay, all the growth conditions, you have to control them and provide the optimal ones every day, all day, 24/7. Okay, this is something we're only able to achieve in our energy to food solution in Iceland. And why is that important to keep algae happy? Because when you keep them happy, you basically enable natural metabolic pathways to overproduce the compound of interest. I'll give you an example. What you see here on the left is spirulina. It's a known superfood. Everybody knows, right? So it's full of proteins and vitamins and minerals, but regular spirulina cultivated in an open pond does not have active B12. What you get is a pseudo B12, which is not biologically available for us. Not a good place for looking for vitamin B12. Okay, now let me introduce a cow. Okay, beef is an important food, and the nutritional composition is unlike any other food in the world. And look what happens when you bring happy algae to the picture. This is the Icelandic ultraspirulina, and oh my God, even the vitamin B12, the active vitamin B12 matches the level of beef. Why? Because again, you kept them happy, you kept it in optimal conditions, you actually activated metabolic pathways for overproduction of vitamin B12. Why is this nutritional parity of interest? Because beef is one of the most unsustainable foods we cultivate. The environmental footprint of beef is horrific. On the other hand, the environmental footprint of Icelandic ultraspirulina is amazing. So the gap between the nutritional parity and the difference in environmental impact, that's where our carbon credits come from. So what is impact nutrition, as we call it in VAXA? The nutrition side, it means that you don't have to eat stinking algae and have green teeth after it. You can integrate Icelandic ultraspirulina as an ingredient in different foods, from sushi to bagels, have no different taste and color, but definitely enjoy the nutritional benefits, especially the vitamin B12. On the impact side, cultivating Icelandic ultraspirulina means certified carbon credits. So how would impact nutrition change the world? I would like to ask my friend and colleague, Crystal, to tell us about impact nutrition.
Thank you, Isaac. I'm really happy to be here. I've heard them say, you know, happy wife, happy life. Possibly we at VAXA should say happy algae, happy life, right? One of the other things that we need to think about now is that we have to move away from intention. We actually have to move to action. Everybody has good intentions, but we need to do something about that. If we, you know, as Isaac just mentioned, sorry, I haven't, there we go. As Isaac just mentioned, we have this wonderful energy-to-food technology that produces Icelandic ultraspirulina. We put the super in superfood, and we use the Icelandic ultraspirulina as an ingredient, a key ingredient, in food fortification programs across the globe. We use it in traditional food so that we don't have to have people eating things that they're not used to. And if we consider that 200 million people 200 million children under the age of 5 are malnourished. We need to take action now. We can't wait, right? We fund our action program with through the sale of carbon credits, and it's with the support of our initial investors, our initial partners actually, who are making the first phase of our action program possible. I will be heading to Tanzania next week. I'm really excited about this because 160 children will participate in this first phase. What will happen is that they will receive their daily porridge at school with the inclusion of IUS. We've done this with a scientific methodology in collaboration with Matisse, who is the Food Institute of Iceland, and they have determined several things. They've determined that the porridge with the inclusion of IUS has no taste, no texture, no smell differences. And this is really important because it means that the children are going to be able to accept it. And without acceptance levels, our program will not be successful. What they've also determined is that the nutritional benefits of the porridge with IUS are far increased with Icelandic ultraspirulina. Otherwise, there would be no point in doing this. Right? They need to be eating traditional foods that are more nutritious. Malnourishment does not mean necessarily that they don't have access to food. They don't have access to nourishing food, right? So there we go. We have a wonderful value proposition. The sale of 1 carbon credit supports the nutrition of 1 woman, child, or person in the world. That's a really important thing for us to remember as I move forward onto the numbers. Our carbon project was developed and over the last few years, but it was validated and verified in 2023. This was done with Earthhood, who won the Best Verification Company Award in a year where carbon projects were really spun on its head. It was a difficult year, lots of questions were asked, and with good reason. High quality is so important. So we've developed our project with the core carbon principles in mind to ensure that we have all these aspects there. It's a technological credit, which is what the market is asking for. We offer transparency because the credits are housed on a blockchain platform. We have great governance because our host country is Iceland, so we have to really follow the law and do everything by the book. We have enormous social impacts through our action program. And we have additionality because a carbon project like this really impacts the emissions caused by the beef industry. And we have our spirulina, which is a key ingredient in our food program. In 2023, in 2024, we will have CO2 equivalent savings of around 3 million tons. That is pretty significant. And over the next 10 years, we will have a savings of 100 million tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions. So I'll take you back to that value proposition. The sale of 1 carbon credit supports the nutrition of 1 person. So that's 100 million people over the next 10 years. VAXA in Icelandic means grow. We grow life, and we would like to invite everybody to take action with us. We open the floor to your questions.
Thank you for the very interesting talk. You mentioned B12 specifically. I'm wondering if you're looking into other algae or improving the algae, changing something, or is it more of the same algae?
Yeah. So first of all, in order to create this equation to beef, the missing element was B12. So if you look at essential amino acids and bioavailable iron, they're all there. So this was the key for us, just to make this equation and then draw the carbon credits from that equation. The solution that Crystal mentioned, the nutrition solution we provide for middle, low-income countries, is complete. It's a whole solution. It's based on the science of what's missing in these places, and it's a vitamin-mineral mix based on Icelandic ultraspirulina. But whatever is missing, we complement. So we do not give half a solution. It's a complete solution.
How big can you scale this? Like, if how much area will need to be covered? Do you move outside of Iceland, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And in fact, one of the key advantages of our technology is the ability to decouple the dependency between the local weather conditions and allow fast scale-up. What we do is we are simply copying and pasting technology. So the units that you've seen, these are called production units. The production units are utilizing very little of the resources that are needed. Very easy and fast to scale up. All we need is just to build another production unit, and then we produce tons and tons, hundreds of tons of the Icelandic ultraspirulina. The other element is the composition, the nutrition composition of the Icelandic ultraspirulina. You need to add very, very little in order to get the B12 and the nutritional benefits that one needs. So the small inclusion rate, together with a very cost-effective, economical way of scaling up, gives a very nice pathway to support large population. The other reason that we selected spirulina is that this is a known algae. There's no risks. It's very easy to implement. People are very familiar with it. It's the same spirulina. It's just that when you give it the optimum conditions, you get so much more out of it.
Yeah, to answer your question numerically, this one location, Iceland, where we operate, it's 20 minutes away from the city, the capital Reykjavik. The numbers that Crystal mentioned translate to 10 million tons of carbon credits per year. That's the initial phase where the building is actually existing. We have a 10x expansion option on that location, and it's only one location. The only thing that you need to build is access to clean energy and cold water. Now remember, clean energy is something you can get off the grid. You can be in California next to the ocean and get your clean energy that's produced somewhere else, but a clean energy producer. So the aspects of this going big are enormous, and as Ohad just explained, it's a copy-paste. It's just a matter of finding someone, to buy the carbon. So if the major companies in the world, the Intels and the Googles, or whatever, decided that's their choice of carbon credits, then we can move very fast and we can feed a lot of people. And the challenge is huge. You saw 200 million malnourished children. What about women? What about elderly? It's vulnerable populations that are all under huge stress, and we can make a big change in their life.
Thank you for your presentation and everything your group is doing for impact and providing this nutrition. I have two questions based on the carbon credit topic. How was the timeline for receiving the official certification? And then what were some of your main challenges during the application process?
Well, we are already certified. We've been validated and verified in 2023. That was a bit of a robust process, to say the least. And we do our verifications for our credits twice a year, simply because we want to maintain the high quality. We have a closed system, monitoring system, so we can't go in there and change anything, which is really important in the carbon market, at this point. And what were the challenges? Well, just developing a carbon project right now is a challenge. Lots of negativity in the market, and you need to have something that's different, and we do. We have technological credit, right, which is something the market is definitely asking for. It's available now. Our credits are available now. It's not something that we're talking about in the future. So that's a huge benefit for us, not a challenge, right? And the challenge for us is going to be reaching those organizations that have hard to abate emissions, who want volume, who need volume, because as we've just mentioned, we have enormous volume and great potential to scale. And it's not just selling the carbon credits. We're meeting so many of the SDGs. We're impacting lives. We're not just doing an impact nutrition program that only feeds people. We're looking at long-term security as well. So the more people who get involved, the more companies who get involved, the greater impact we can have.
I can tell you about one of the keys that made it happen. It's, as Ohad explained, moving from agriculture to technology. The reason is many natural materials, they change. They change the composition, depends on the weather, depends on the season, depends on the area in the field, right? So to make this nutrition parity, of any natural thing to beef, yeah, maybe today, but in the winter, what's the composition? In the summer, what's the composition? Only technological solution can show that there is a parity, and the parity holds every day of the year, 24/7. Okay, so that was the key enabler to open then this methodology to something that makes sense.
Thanks again for your intriguing presentation. My question is your project, should it be seen as a project that combats malnutrition with the added benefit of removing carbon? Or are you a carbon removal project with the added benefit of combating malnutrition? Because my thinking is, how energy efficient is it as a carbon removal method? For every ton that you remove, how big is the energy input?
So that's a very good question. And first, I have to say we don't see a conflict. We can do both. And one very important element is that our production process is carbon negative. So we are one of these unique carbon emission avoidance projects that combine both, algae eat carbon. And the fact that we are integrated with the geothermal power plant and we utilize the natural waste streams of the power plant, including CO2, makes our production process carbon negative. So it's one of these really unique and amazing opportunities that you can reduce a lot of carbon, giving a better nutrition solution without any cost on the other side, both on carbon and on the nutrition. So we look at ourselves as both.
Yeah, I would like to address your question. Okay, so one of the keys is, as Krista mentioned, is additionality. Okay, so you cannot do the amazing work and combat malnutrition without the support from the carbon credits. Okay, so what comes first? We have to sell the carbon credits first, then we can enable this nutrition program. But why is it so energy efficient? If you look at the numbers that I mentioned here, 1 ton of beef equals 100 tons of CO2 emissions. Okay, equivalent. It's mainly methane emissions that we're avoiding. Okay, this 1 to 100x means that for 1 ton of Icelandic ultraspirulina, you're getting 100 tons of CO2 credits. That 100x made the difference. That's why we can generate such a huge carbon impact with hundredth in terms of volume of biomass. Okay, so that's the difference. Krista, anything to add?
I do, yeah. Just from the program point of view, when we taking the spirulina to the people in Tanzania, for example, the inclusion rates are so small that there is no, aside from my flight to Tanzania, right, there is no transportation costs or emissions or anything associated with that because it's literally a bag, right? So it's a really low emission initiative.
Just to get the numbers, the amount of this vitamin mineral mix based on Icelandic spirulina that you need, 0.03 grams per person per day. 0.03 grams. So if you produce several tons of it, you can imagine how many people you can feed. It's a very efficient way to create impact on both environment and nutrition.
In the sense of call for actions in order to make your great vision, mission, whatever, into reality, what are the main challenges you see and where do you need help or support?
I think that as we're a startup and we're newly validated and verified, what we really need is advocacy. We need people to be talking about us. We need to be out there in the media. We need you to share our posts. We need to be reaching these large organizations because, we are new. They don't know us. They don't know if they can trust us. The carbon world is, complicated and we just need endorsement, by people who matter. And we've got great initial partners. We've got the largest bank in Iceland. We've got the largest tourism company in Iceland who've come on board. Some really great partners. And so we've already proven that we have done the due diligence that's needed to be done. And so you can help us share that message.
Great. Amazing presentation. Thank you so much. big round of applause again, please, for VAXA Technologies.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Right, now, apologies. Last but definitely not least, we will talk a bit more about data. I have here with me Dr. Jana Lipenkova, CEO of Equintel. Welcome.
At the end of 2022, I remember that when I went to Christmas and end-of-year gatherings, then ChatGPT and generative AI were the hot topics on the agenda. And end of 2023, ChatGPT, of course, is still there, but the topic that really moved people, it was the new sustainability regulations, so especially the CSRD in Europe. So all of us know that companies today, they face this burden of having to comply with a range of new sustainability requirements. Otherwise, they can just face very high penalties and even end up in jail, for their managers. And the problem with the regulations is that they encourage companies to focus on ESG data and reporting. So for example, yesterday I was talking to a client of ours. She is head of ESG at a big private company. And I was trying to figure out what is her materiality assessment process, right? Because this is the first step that you need to do before the ESG reporting. And she was very honest with me. She told me, Jana, I don't have a process. So I need to spend my time trying to talk to stakeholders, to collect some data, make sense of the data, and basically figure out the process that would work for us. And this is the situation in many companies today, so people just get bogged down in all those details of the new reporting requirements. And of course, we need this. So we need the new regulations, we need the standards as a framework for us and our companies. But when it comes to our planet, I don't think it cares. It doesn't need the data, it doesn't need more reports, it definitely doesn't need more paperwork and more greenwashing. What our planet needs is really action, as you said it really rightly, right? And it's action that is really fast, that is bold, and that is aggressive, because we have already messed up a lot of our sustainability ambitions. So at Equintel, we use AI to automate ESG data processing, materiality assessments, and ESG reporting. And additionally to that, we also introduce a bias to action with a new step, which is basically about building very detailed profiles for the material topics of companies. And then based on these profiles, we can also come up with automated recommendations for ESG projects and use cases that the company might take. So people can actually focus on the implementation of their sustainability strategy and of the use cases. Let's see how this works at the example of Nestle. So as said, we started with a materiality assessment. This is just one view of it. And basically what we do here is that we collect a large quantity of external data online, so data that covers the perspectives of many different stakeholders, and then we use natural language processing to extract the relevant topics for the company and also to map them on the material topics in the regulations, so in this case it would be the CSRD. Then in the second step, for each of these topics, we will basically build a detailed profile that contains the subtopics, the trends related to the topic, including technological trends, technological solutions that can be used to address it, and also including competitor actions. And then, as said, we use all this data and input it to a generative AI model to generate specific use cases that we can recommend to the company. And in the final step, so that's still ongoing, we are now working basically on augmenting ESG reporting with features like automated text generation from data, report checks, and so on. What is the technology behind all of that? So we love data still, as long as it's automatically processed. So basically we started with big data collection from the internet. We collect a whole range of different data sources. So basically business media, general media, consumer press, trade press, and so on. The data is collected on a continuous basis. So basically it's updated daily, which ensures that the database and all the analysis, they're always up to date. Then, most sustainability data is unstructured, so that's why we follow up with a natural language processing step, which basically helps us to structure the data. And then comes the insight generation, so basically finding the material topics, assessing industry trends, providing peer group rankings, and so on. And finally, the generative AI step, so where we come up with concrete and actionable recommendations for the companies. So here this can be use cases and projects, but it can also be suppliers, it can be providers of new technological solutions, and so on. And I really want to dwell a bit here because these three steps, right, this is classical analytical AI. This is something we have been doing for a couple of years already. But the push last year that we had with generative AI, it really enables us to make this link to actionability, so to go from insights to recommendations. And this is really, I think it's a big breakthrough, which basically puts this whole notion of a data-driven organization on a new level. So that's our AI pipeline. We're still spending a lot of time developing and improving it, because what we see is that people really need a lot of time and space basically to focus on their strengths. And their strengths are building sustainability strategies that are aligned with their business strategies, implementing use cases and sustainability actions, and then also shifting the whole mindset and the whole culture in their organizations. And all this groundwork of processing the data, of deriving recommendations and insights from the data, on reporting on the data, we can just leave it to the AI, right? Because it's getting better and better. And I mean, myself, I'm not a hype person. I did my PhD in AI 10 years ago. So I think that this AI push that we had now last year, it really comes at the perfect time to empower us to address our today's sustainability challenges and really to transform our organizations. Thank you very much.
Right, any questions?
Thank you for a very interesting presentation, and I can see a great need for your product. I'm curious about a few things. How does the business model look like, and what kind of resources is needed with your clients and the process there? And also, secondly, I see that there is, maybe not in your business, but few businesses are really great at closing the gap between reporting and the analysis and insight they get from sustainability reporting and incorporate it into the actual business strategy. You mentioned it, but I'm curious about if you're working on anything to help them do that.
Yeah, let me go back. So first, to answer the question about the business model, basically we have a SaaS, B2B SaaS business model. I mean, now we are still in the startup phase, so we normally have some effort for the client at the beginning, right? So both a setup effort on our side and then also an effort for ingesting the data, providing, you know, some previous sustainability work and data to us on the client side. And once the setup is done, we go into a monthly subscription then with the clients. And what we normally see is, of course, that, reporting periods, so once in a year there is more demand, like for consulting, for some additional features and so on. So then we also jump in and do some additional customization for the clients. So that's in terms of the business model. And in terms of the gap or this bridge between the reporting and the actions, I think it's a super valid question, because what we see with many companies now is that they report, but there is nothing behind the report, right? So there is no real action, and I understand that because, the requirements are so high just in terms of collecting the data, cleaning the data, assembling the data, and then putting the data into the report, that people and teams, they just don't have the capacity to implement anything on the ESG side. And so at the moment, what we do here is that really once we have done the materiality assessment, we will come up with these recommendations. So I said at the moment it's use cases, suppliers, and then providers of innovative ESG solutions or sustainability solutions, right? And then we cannot automate the execution at the moment, right? But at least we kind of spare them this whole research work and brainstorming work and so on, and give them the ready recommendations.
Yeah, thank you for a wonderful presentation. I think one of the advantages of this approach is being able to identify disruptive solutions, right?
Definitely.
So let's make a case study, okay? For instance, you can come back to Nestle and say, hey, Nestle, what happens if you decided to go carbon neutral with integrating Icelandic ultraspirulina in your basket of products? Guess what? They're going to have higher nutrition level, and look at how many other people would benefit from that. So how would this, for example, how would this work?
This would work in the use cases, right? So we would have the spirulina as one of the use cases, and then this is still in development, but basically we would also list the providers that are offering the solution, right? But as you rightly say, we have a very strong focus on new technologies, on innovations, because we really believe that if we want this sustainability transition, we cannot do it in the old-fashioned way. Let's do it? Yeah, sure.
Without going into too much of technical details regarding GenAI, which LLM are you using and why, and how do you ensure data protection, data security, on-prem versus cloud?
So at the moment, I mean, for us, we use LLMs, let's say, high level in two different places, right? One is in production, so when we really generate the use cases and so on, and the other one is for generating the training data. So for generating the training data, we normally use GPT-4 or ChatGPT if you want to generate at a larger scale. And if we go into production, then at the moment we are using two LLMs, depends on the client, which are Llama 2 and then the Mistral LLM, right? And that helps us also to solve the privacy issues. And additionally, of course, we also have plans to fine-tune the models. So once we have enough of this data accumulated, also to instruction fine-tune, so they can really generate the use cases and the recommendations in a very tailored way.
ESG reporting is so big in the last sort of 6 months to a year. How are you reaching, your market? There are so many players in the market. So, what makes you unique, and how are you reaching your customers?
Well, at the moment, I think we have a rather simple hook, which is the materiality assessment, because this is something that we can do out of the box automatically with the machine. And on the other hand, if a big company, for example, asks a consulting company to do it, then it can be above 100k euros, right? So I think that there the gain is very clear and very obvious for the company, right? And then we are bootstrapped. So what we normally do is that we really look, okay, what are the most acute needs of the company? And then we will set up a customization project to implement the new features, and basically this is the way how we finance the product development, because it could get very huge with many different features, and that's why we really need this proof that there is actually a customer need and a paying customer for a new feature.
I guess I have one question. The use cases I think is really, really interesting, right? You're using generative AI for that, right? So how do you have any type of kind of quality, control, verification, of what kind of use cases you include, what kind of projects or suppliers, or is that in the plan?
We do have a training data set that we then split, into the real training data and the evaluation data, right? And this data set, it's humanly curated. So that's the technical side of it. On the other hand, with generative AI, when you put it into production, the evaluation that you do with users, it often gives you quite different results, right? So if you do evaluation in terms of user satisfaction, user adoption, and so on, then it can give you different results. And that's why normally with the clients, we have a beta phase, right? So a specific time span where they have time to test the tool, to provide feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down on the use cases, and then we integrate that again in our training loop. Right, but you are completely right that generative AI, it's very intricate in terms of the evaluation, right? Especially if you really generate online in production. That's a risky thing.
Amazing, thank you. Any more questions? Yes?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question about the data privacy aspect. As you come in, do you manage the data, or do you provide more of a consultancy on how they should manage it? What is your approach in terms of data privacy?
So our approach is, as said, we started with the materiality assessment, and materiality assessment can happen with external data, right? That's how you normally do it. So you want to see, okay, in my industry, in my peer group, and so on, what are the topics on the agenda? That's even something we recommend to clients rather than doing some internal research, because this is always biased. And normally what happens then is that while we work on that with the clients, they also build trust, right? And then as their hunger for more features grows, they are also willing to share more of their data, right? So that's, it's a tricky question, right? And it's always this path of building trust with the clients, and it's definitely also kind of a, it does slow down our scalability.
Because it's almost like a type of accounting, no? It's just ESG accounting. So
exactly.
So
exactly.
Are you kind of like the accountant that at the end is responsible and signs off on it, or you provide more of the platform for them to do it, and the responsibility is really the companies at the end? If something's misreported or something, you're not the one who's responsible, but they are, right? Or
so if you are talking about the company internal data, then it is their responsibility.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jana. A big round of applause. All right. And just to close this session, thank you so much to the 4 companies that have presented today. I think, crazy variety, from fertilizers to superfoods to fire to data. I think, we've heard it all today. Also wrapping up this week, I think, we've heard from 15 companies that have very different, approaches, but each and every single one can make a huge impact. And so thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you for tuning in online. And we'll take a little break here until, I think it's 1. Yes, and we'll be back live on the live stream, so please, come back. Thank you so much. We hope to be here again next year. And I would like to extend again a big thank you to Doconomy, to UBS for hosting us here, to all the partners who make this possible. And hopefully we'll be at WEF 2025 at an even bigger stage. Thank you.